we're going to look at a couple story problems dealing with growth and decay problems and see if we can solve these with sequences. So, first problem here, Delilah has a 200-page book to read. She's going to read 10 pages on the first day, but she's going to increase the number of pages she reads each day by 10%. So since she's increasing, this is going to be growth. And since we're increasing by a percentage, this is going to be a geometric sequence. If we remember what we've learned before, to find that ratio for this geometric sequence for percent growth, we are going to take 1 plus the percentage divided by 100, which is going to give me 1.10. And this is going to be my ratio for my sequence. So I can say U sub n equals 1.10 times U sub n minus 1. But to make any sense out of this, I want to know, what does n mean and what does U sub n mean? N is going to be the day number. How many days since she started reading? U sub n is going to be number of pages read on that day. As we work with these problems, again, it's good someplace to define what does your n mean, what does that U sub n mean. It's going to make it easier when we start to actually answer these questions. Like our first question here is, for my starting value, do I want U sub 0 or U sub 1? Well, since my U sub n is the number of pages read on that day, and the n is the number of days you've read, the first day she wrote 10 pages, so that first value has to be U sub 1. So U sub 1 is 10. To figure out part A, we want to know how many pages she read on the 10th day. That's just going to be U sub 10. And I used my calculator, plugged in the recursive formula, and I got U sub 10 is 23.6. So she read 23.6 pages on the 10th day. For this problem, there's really not an easy way to do part B. There are ways to do that. We haven't learned that yet. That's something that you'll talk about in pre-calculus. At this point, it's only over 10 days. We can find up and we can take U sub 1 plus U sub 2 plus U sub 3 and all the way to U sub 10. We have to find U sub 10, we have to find all of these numbers, so we just add those together, and you'll find after 10 days, she has read 159.4 pages. Now, she's not quite done with the book, but she's pretty close. So it was a 200-page book. She's at about 160. She has about 40 pages left. She's already reading over 20 pages a day, so it's going to take her 2 more days to finish. That's not too bad. For our next problem, we're going to go over to Darcy. Darcy has the same 200-page book to read, but she doesn't want to read more and more each day. She figures she's going to read a little bit, get all the reading done early, so she's going to start off and read 10% of the book on the first day, and then every day she's going to read 10% of what she has left. So her thought is, I read 10% a day, I get done in 10 days, good enough. Let's see if that really works. Here, she's reading 10% of what she had left. So, in this case, this is a little different. We're not looking at how many pages she's read. We're looking at how many pages are left after she got done reading. So, if she read 10%, that means that she always has 90% left. And that's why, in this case, we are going to look at 1 minus 10% to give us that 0.90. This is going to be my ratio, and we're going to be looking at U sub n equals 0.9 times U sub n minus 1. Again, what do these variables mean? N is still going to be number of days. But the big difference in this sequence, in Darcy's sequence, is her U sub n is the number of pages left. Since she's reading 10% of what she had left, she is taking the number of pages down by 10% each time. And that's why this one is doing that 1 minus 0.10. It is a decay function. Now, since U sub n is the number of pages she has left to read, on the first day, she doesn't have 200 anymore. 200 is before the first day, before she starts reading. So this is one where we're going to say U sub 0 equals 200. Because after the end of the first day, she doesn't have 200 pages left. She's already read 10% or 20 pages. So for hers, when we look at our U sub 10 on the 10th day, we're going to get 69.7 pages. Now, with this one, it's easier to figure out, is she done or not? How many pages has she read? Because the sequence automatically gives me how many pages she has left to read. But she's not in a good place. Daphne only had about 40 pages, Delilah only had about 40 pages left to read. She has 70 pages left to go. But she's reading fewer and fewer pages each day. For part B, if you start looking, how long will it take her to finish? Use your calculator, look at that table, keep going down. It's going down slower and slower because she's reading less and less each day. Each day she has 90% of the book left to read, or 90% of what she had at the beginning of the day left to read. After 50 days, she will finally get to about 1 page left to read. After 100 days, she will get less than 1%, less than 0.01 of a book. 100 days is 0.005 pages. So she's practically done, but mathematically she will never finish that book because every day she's only reading 10% of what's left. She's leaving 90% to read the next day. So it's going to take her forever. A thing to remember on these story problems, almost any story problems, when you start writing down a formula here, also take a minute to think, what do those variables mean? Or we come back to Delilah's. What do the variables mean? So we can interpret the answer we get. When we get our U sub 10, what does that mean? How does that help us answer the question?